than against divine law. If it was not against divine law, on direct commandment of my bishop, I would have to celebrate it, right? If the Pope tells me that in a Dominican monastery somewhere they don't have a priest left, it's only brothers, and please, Father Hesse, celebrate the Dominican rite for them, I will say, yes, sir, anytime you want. The Dominican rite, the old Dominican rite, of course. Fine. I have to obey. The reason why I cannot obey the Pope is because I'm bound to the divine law. And the new rite is against the divine law. Therefore, I'm not allowed to celebrate it. I commit a sin if I celebrate it. I did celebrate it. I didn't know. So subjectively, I did not commit a sin. Objectively, it was horrible what I did. I'm ashamed that I didn't find out earlier. I'm glad I didn't have to confess it. So these people are running a museum. Anybody who receives his faculties and his blessings from Ecclesia Dei, except for useful purposes. I got the decree of Ecclesia Dei here. Now this is on tape and they might take it back, but I'm deadly afraid of this. Here's the decree of the Ecclesia Dei Commission that allows me to celebrate Mass privately in the old rite. But sometimes it's useful. I don't believe in this. It's null and void, but sometimes it's useful. And if they want to take it back, let them take it back, okay? I got my travel luggage altar. I have celebrated Mass in hotel rooms. This is the situation we're in. We're back to the catacombs, thanks to Paul VI. And the reason why I mention the Fraternity of St. Peter and the Institute of Christ the King is not to put them down, especially not the members. Monsignor Wack, the founder of the Institute of Christ the King, is a friend of mine for now 18 or 19 years. And some of the priests of the Institute are friends of mine, some of the priests in the Fraternity of St. Peter are friends of mine. Friendship usually is, especially among men, something that does not necessarily concern religion and politics. With me, a lot more politics than religion. So I have Episcopalian friends and I love them, but they're Republicans. And so the reason why I mention them is to explain to you why I want you, if it is possible, to go to the Masses of St. Pius X. Now, if you happen, I don't know the geographical situation here, if you happen to live around the corner of a chapel of the Institute of Christ the King or the Fraternity of St. Peter, and the chapel of the Society of St. Pius X is 2 hours away, of course you're allowed to go to the, provided it's the old Mass and they don't give communion in the hand there, because like they do in indult Masses. Or if you live around the corner of the indult Mass, and they do not commit sacrilege there, you're allowed to go there. But, I warn you, first of all, there's two dangers. First of all, in their sermons, you cannot be sure you will get the doctrine of the Church. Now, with the Society of St. Pius X, even if a sermon there might be incredibly boring, it will never be against the doctrine of the Church. With the indult Mass and the Fraternity of St. Peter, there's a probability that they will tell you the truth, but you don't know. And there's another thing. When you go to communion with the Society of St. Pius X, you definitely know that the little hosts distributed to you were consecrated by one of the priests of the Society of St. Pius X within the old Mass. With the indult Mass, you might get the host that some liberal, hippie 1968 generation priest in an invalid celebration attempted to consecrate. So they're only cookies, crackers. With the Fraternity of St. Peter, you can go to communion without hesitation. Because if it's their own chapel, if they are not just borrowing the chapel, if they have their own chapel, then it's only them who celebrate there, so the Blessed Sacrament is valid. Now, as far as the issue of validity is concerned, I highly recommend you to read both of Father Trinchard's books, who explains in painful detail and very precisely, and quoting all the necessary authorities, why the new Mass in the English language is with the highest probability invalid. Invalid, that means the sacrament is not taking place. It's just like going to an Episcopalian church, except that the rite with the Episcopalians is a lot nicer. And there's no time and space here to explain the issue of validity. Read Father Trinchard's books. However, you have to be careful. If you can't go to anywhere else but to the indult Mass, go, but don't go to communion. You don't have to. The Church says you must go to communion once a year. Well, once a year you will be able to drive 3 or 4 hours to the next chapel, if you have to go that far, to the next chapel of St. Pius X and receive a definitely, positively valid communion there. See, the thing is, I'm not saying that 99.9% of the churches or parishes in this country do not celebrate Mass anymore, do not have the Blessed Sacrament of the Tabernacle anymore. I do not say that. I only say one thing, which Pope Innocent III said. You always must. Now this is official church doctrine. You always must adapt the safer course. You are not allowed to take chances with the sacraments. You're not allowed to. If you take chances with the sacraments, you're in sin. So if you don't know about the validity, stay away from communion. You don't have to. That's one of the greatest mistakes in our days. I don't see people going to confession, but I always see them going to communion. Either they're all very, 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 very holy, or they don't care. And it's a mistake to think that you have to go to communion in any case. And don't make the mistake a religious sister recently made in my presence saying, "Oh, Father, but I have a problem. I have to go to communion, otherwise all the sisters will see that I do not go to communion." I said, that's very easy. Grab a sandwich 5 minutes before Mass and let them see you do it. What are they concerned with? What the others think or say, or what at the Last Judgment will be said to them? Don't worry. Go to the Society of St. Pius X as much as possible, and if this is really too much for you, because you would have to go too far, or if the roads are, well, there won't be much ice here in winter in Louisiana, but in New England there is. I repeat what I said in one of the other lectures because it's of extreme importance. The third commandment does not say you have to go to Mass. The third commandment says you have to keep the Sunday holy. Actually, it says the Sabbath, but, the Sunday. You have to sanctify Sunday. That's the third commandment. It is the Church that says you have to go to Mass. The Church can only give positive laws. So the Church has to provide the possibility for you. It is the Church's duty to make sure you can go to Sunday Mass. So if the Church does not provide you with its own liturgy, this is defined dogma of the Faith Council of Trent. The faithful have the right, God-given right, to receive the sacraments in their own right. My own right is not the Novus Ordo of Paul VI of infelicitous memory. My own right is the everlasting Mass, the Mass, la messe de toujours, as Lefebvre called it, the Mass of all the times. That is my own right, not a newly written up right. And in this context, I quote Trent again. 7th section, Canon 13. You will find it in Father Trinchard's book. Canon 13 of the 7th session said, whoever says that one of the pastors includes the Pope, right? It doesn't say one of the pastors subject to the Supreme Pontiff. It says one of the pastors, so it includes the Pope. Whoever says that one of the pastors is allowed to omit or add anything to the liturgy or to write up a new liturgy, he's outside the Church. If Pope Paul VI had said that, he would have ceased to be Pontiff, most probably. He never said it, he just did it. He never endorsed it either. He never put his signature to a decree that says you have to use the new rite. So Pius V said you must not create a new rite. The Council of Trent said you cannot create a new rite. And Paul VI did not say we have to use the new rite. So the book he created, the book he had written up by a couple of bureaucrats, this book is just simply null and void. And all Paul VI says in his introduction to the book, the Constitutio Apostolica Missale Romanum of 1969, he says, I like this book and I add 3 Eucharistical prayers. Nowhere does he say you have to use it. So if you use it, you're going against divine law, defined Council of Trent, you're going against divine law established by Pius V forever, and you think you're obeying something which was never decreed by Paul VI of most infelicitous memory. So you understand what I'm saying? The new Mass is illicit, it is not my right. The Council of Trent defined that I have the right to hear Mass according to my right. So what do you do if you cannot have the old Mass? Because it's too far away. Father Schmidberger once said, and I think he's an authority on those things because Father Schmidberger is not known for being overly indulgent with people. Father Schmidberger said if you have to drive for more than an hour to get Mass, then you are dispensed. Well, the European standards. I mean, 1 hour in Europe is like 5 hours in Texas, right? So your conscience will have to tell you what you do. But in New England, on icy roads, I would never tell anybody to drive an hour to Mass. It's ridiculous. You don't have to risk your life for something the Church guarantees to you and does not give to you. You are not obliged to risk your life for that. Absolutely not. The Church has dogmatically defined that you have a right for the old Mass, and it doesn't give you the old Mass. We need a so-called excommunicated group to provide I will come back to that. We need a so-called excommunicated group to provide us with what the Church guarantees dogmatically defined in the Council of Trent. This is ridiculous. So you will hopefully not misunderstand when I'm said you are dispensed, when it is sub gravi incommodo, as the Church says, under grave incommodity. What do you do in that case? Well, you sit home and you say an additional rosary to the rosaries you usually say. Oh, please don't give me the cheap thing, like you say a rosary every day and then you say one on Sunday instead of going to Mass. I mean, you have to understand that you will have to do a little bit more on Sundays to sanctify Sunday. If you are among the good and wonderful people who say the daily rosary, then please say a second or third one on Sunday. And take your Sunday Missal and read the Mass. You don't have to read the entire Mass. It's one of those mistakes people who want to celebrate with a priest like me who celebrates Mass in 20 minutes, and then they can't keep up, and afterwards they say, Father, I couldn't follow you. And I say, what's the matter with you? You want to celebrate? Read the reading of the Gospel and pray. In the old days, you didn't have a Missal to follow Mass. The priest would tell you, say a rosary, or he would hand you a book with a Mass devotion. So don't pretend you have to understand every prayer. You don't understand it anyway. And don't think that you have to follow the priest with every single line he says. I once met a woman in Rome who put herself visibly to everybody right here. Up there was the altar. And then at the canon, she went like this. So everybody could see she knew even the canon by heart. Now, this is what I call mental disturbances. And or in politically correct newspeak, wisdom-challenged woman. Woman, excuse me, with a Y. That's sure a wisdom-challenged person who thinks that she must concelebrate with the priest by saying every word he says. Don't. But at home, if you don't get to Mass, take your time for reading the Missal. God will accept it as your Sunday duty to be fulfilled. Naturally. A nurse in the hospital who's got 12 hours service there can't go to Mass. And somebody who's lying in the hospital, in bed, can't go to Mass. But he has to sanctify Sunday, and if it is only in intention, he has to sanctify Sunday. Because God himself cannot dispense from the third commandment. Because the 3 commandments concerning himself he cannot dispense of. God cannot dispense you from believing in him, from having to believe in him. God cannot dispense you from not abusing his name. And God cannot dispense you from fulfilling Sunday obligation. But if the Church does not give you the possibility of fulfilling your Sunday obligation the way the Church wants it, then it's the Church's fault that you can't do it, and not yours. And now, as far as the excommunication is concerned, well, I told you that Archbishop Lefebvre was indeed, in reality, following the official, formal, according to Church tradition, established will of the Supreme Pontiff. So the excommunication is invalid, of course. According to Canon 1325, I believe it is, don't kill me if I made a mistake, of the new Code of Canon Law, which was signed by the present Pope in 1983, according to this new Code of Canon Law, which says, if somebody commits a crime against a canon of this book, even if he erroneously is in good conscience, he cannot be punished with the full punishment. So the excommunication provided by Canon, forgot which one, for illegal and illicit episcopal consecrations does not apply, period. And Cardinal Ratzinger said so. And recently at the Gregorian University in Rome, a doctoral thesis was accepted with the highest mark that proved this to be a fact. So the only one who is still saying that Archbishop Lefebvre is excommunicated is the Fraternity of St. Peter, needless to say. And the Indult people. Cardinal Ratzinger doesn't say it. The Pope privately doesn't say it. He's not honest enough to come out in public against his fraudulent decree of 1988, to which I will come back. And the Gregorian University, right under the eyes of the Pope, accepts a doctoral dissertation on the subject, saying that Archbishop Lefebvre is not excommunicated. And recently, Cardinal Ratzinger was asked by a pious lady in Germany if why the congregation, why the Secretariat for the non-Catholic religions does not extend its ecumenical activities towards the Society of St. Pius X. Cardinal Ratzinger, in writing, answered in writing, the Society of St. Pius X is not outside the Church, it is only disobedient, which of course we know it is not. We know they are not disobedient. But Cardinal Ratzinger put in writing that the Society of St. Pius X is not outside the Church. He dares to contradict his Pope, who in 1988 in the document Ecclesia Dei 3 times says they're outside the Church. So who's right again? Well, this is the thing with the Novus Ordo Conciliar Church of the New Advent, as the Pope calls it. I would have never dreamed up this term. The Church of the New Advent is fraudulent, because today it says this and tomorrow it says another thing. And what do you call a man who today says this and tomorrow says another thing? Well, politically correct speak would say he's a man who has chosen the lifestyle of untruth, which means he's a damn liar. And the document Ecclesia Dei, not only, as I pointed out in one of my previous lectures, is heretical against the dogmatic Constitution Dei Filius of the First Vatican Council on the tradition of the Church, quoting Dei Verbum number 8 of Vatican II, which gives an erroneous interpretation of tradition. It is also fraudulent as far as canon law is concerned, because it just does not mention the necessary canons, which explain that Archbishop Lefebvre, the 4 bishops who he consecrated, and the co-consecrator, Bishop Castromayor, thank you, never were excommunicated. So I cannot call the Pope a liar, because I do not know if he deliberately lies. I can definitely call him an ignorant of canon law. That's not a sin. I have to presume in charity that he did not deliberately lie. In this case, I have to conclude the guy doesn't know his own canon law. Sorry. But Ecclesia Dei proves what I say. The Pope does not know his own canon law. And this has been proven. If you want to read the 600 or 700 pages Father Mary of the Archdiocese of New York presented as his doctoral dissertation, then just call the Archdiocese of New York, they will provide a photocopy. And so I think I have pretty much explained the situation of the Society of St. Pius X. I should, almost as a gag to this, as a joke, add what happened when Bishop, what's his name, Ferreiro or something like this, of Hawaii. The Bishop of Hawaii. Well, who cares what his name is? The Bishop of Hawaii, there's a Catholic group there who wanted Bishop Fillet to come over to give confirmation to their children. So the local Bishop of Hawaii excommunicated them. Well, with Rome, of course, not being the fastest ever, it needed some 2.5 years, but then Rome took the excommunication back and told Bishop Ferreiro, whatever he's called, of Hawaii, sorry pal, you cannot excommunicate them because they're not outside the Church. He said, you can suspend them. Fine. This is a disciplinary, not a theological punishment. And that's bad enough. But just to show you, Rome does not know where they stand. But unless I can tell you one thing, I know where I stand. Thank God. Thank you. Cheers. Questions and answers. Don't be afraid to ask a silly question. Only the person who laughs about a silly question is silly.
Well, Father, what about the new Christ the King in Italy, in Rome?
The Institute of Christ the King. Well, what I said before.
It follows the same as St. Peter.
Yeah. They celebrate validly, they consecrate validly. If you know that it was them who consecrated the Eucharist, you can go to communion there. But I have never heard a bad sermon coming from them. They're much better than Fraternity of St. Peter. This is sort of generalizing judgment, of course, but I don't see any problem there. It's just beware, be careful. That's all. The only ones you don't have to be careful with is Pius X. This is what I'm saying. Okay.
Well, I
Yeah?
was told that signs in the church in St. Peter where the Pope will not give communion in the hands. Is that true?
That was true until 1990. When I was serving in St. Peter's at the Novus Ordo Mass at 5 o'clock in the afternoon in Latin there, I was responsible for the Blessed Sacrament for 5 years. And I made sure that nobody gave communion in the hand. I didn't always succeed, but I tried my best. And one of the auxiliaries of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia got to understand my wrath when he started to distribute communion in the hand. Now, you have to give communion in the hand upon request in St. Peter's, because the new Archpriest of St. Peter's is none else but Cardinal Virgilio Noé, one of the principal manufacturers of the new liturgy. As a matter of fact, this is something you should know, because then you will understand why I'm critical with this Pope and many people. When Dom Gérard Calvet, the abbot of the monastery of Madeleine le Barou, who later on, unfortunately, concelebrated with the Pope, as I mentioned before, when he came to Rome in 1989, he wanted to say the old Mass at the altar of St. Pius X in St. Peter's Basilica. And he had arrived, get this, he had arrived at the offertory when Cardinal Virgilio Noé walked up and said, "You can't do this here. You will not celebrate the old Mass here." At the offertory. That's a canonical crime. That, in the old days, when the church was healthy and sane, this merited automatical excommunication. That's a sacrilege to interrupt Mass at the offertory. And now, this is not the worst. Cardinal Noé interrupted this Mass, and Dom Gérard Calvet the same day told the Pope. You know what the Pope's reaction was? "I made Cardinal Noé what he is now." Period. Boom. This is not a lawful church. This is tyranny. Next question.
Father, did you hear that the Pope had resigned but didn't put a date on it?
I do not read the Weekly World News, and I do not read the National Enquirer, because I do not believe in rumors.
It was announced by a letter in a church in Florida. Probably the Novus on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, it was announced right here in Pius.
I don't know. One of the first rules of combat is never assume anything. I do not assume. I speak when I can prove what I say. I do not speak before that. Go ahead. Question.
Looking at the devil worship thing that's happening in the Vatican.
History. And I don't even know if it's history. I know there are Satanists in the Vatican, but I don't know how far they practice and what they practiced. And don't trust The Windswept House by Malachi Martin. Don't. Don't trust the book. The book is packed with mistakes. For somebody who claims to know Rome, this guy makes just a little bit too many mistakes. A couple of dozen. He puts the Pope on the 4th floor. All of Italy knows the Pope is living on the terzo piano, the 3rd floor. You don't make mistakes like this unless you don't know Rome. He puts the Secretary of State on a penthouse on a Via Aurelia seminary. The Secretary of State has to stay in his apartment inside the Vatican, or he has to resign. Period. I don't know who the guy is working for. I have a pretty good suspicion whom he's working for, but his books are not written by somebody who knows Rome or Catholic theology very well, as a matter of fact. Next question.
When somebody tells us going to Pius X, we're excommunicated or in schism, do we refer them to that new Canon Code 1325?
Yes, and you refer them to the Council of Trent, which says that each faithful has a right, and when Council of Trent says that, that means it's divine law.
Okay.
By divine law, each faithful has the right to receive the sacraments in his own right. The new right is written up by bureaucrats. It is not the right of the Catholic Church. Quote the Council of Trent again. 7th session, Canon 13. Put down 713. 7th session, Canon 13. You will find the 7th session, Canon 13 in Father Trinchard's book. You will find Saint Pope Pius V, Quo Primum, in Father Trinchard's book, in its entirety. And you will find the fraudulent document Ecclesia Dei in Father Trinchard's book. So there you got the documents you can work with. Anybody speaks about the excommunication to you, first you find out if he wants to know the truth. If he wants to know the truth, then you bother with him. If he does not want to know the truth, but just wants to speak to you for the sake of argument, quote Christ. Leave the house, leave the town, and please, for the quotation in English, leave the town. What's the English translation? And shake off the dust of your shake off the dust of your feet. Okay, that's what you do. Next question.
Father, when others say to you, well, the Holy Father is persecuted, he is surrounded by enemies, the bishops throwing this...
I told you I don't read the Weekly World News or the National Enquirer.
This is universally heard.
Oh, well, that's an international Weekly World News.
You know, among...
You know they found a B-17 fleet on the moon? I read this in the National in the Weekly World News. No, don't believe a word.
No, but
that's my answer. Don't believe a word.
What do you answer to those people?
Nothing.
You just turn from them?
No, you don't turn from them. You say this is ridiculous, and then you mention the Weekly World News. Get the most recent headline at the supermarket. Have it ready.
Father, when I came up as a child, I was always taught when we passed the Catholic Church to bow our head and make the sign of the cross.
Yeah.
Now I bow my head and I say, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, have mercy on their souls.
Yes.
Am I doing right or wrong?
Very right, indeed. I drink to that. Very right. Very right, indeed. Next question.
May I have another one?
Sure. Any.
I was thinking, wouldn't it be a good idea when they say to us, we're excommunicated and so forth, if we would ask them for a document?
Very good, very good, yes. Yeah. Now I want to see what you're referring to. Excuse me, I want to see what you're referring to.
Bravo.
Answer a question with a question.
That's right, yeah. They think they got all the right in the world to attack you. Hit back twice. That's what I always say. I don't wear this uniform for nothing, huh?
Well, I like to say that it's due to a blindness that we've all been under, and by the grace of God, we're coming out of some of it. It's just a discussion, a heated discussion yesterday with a friend, talking about the Pope trying to search for some unity amongst all religions. Well, my friend is of the opinion that he has to do this.
No.
And I tried to quote Pope Pius XI and Mortality.
Very good. Very good.
Like, she never even hears these things. And I've experienced it several times, so we'll never hear them.
At a certain point, you just give up.
As though that we've all been deceived. That's what Fatima is about, isn't it? That we've all been deceived.
Now, at a certain point, you just give up. That's what I said. The moment if you see that this is a poor, misled person, be patient. But if you see that same person is not interested in hearing the truth, you just politely you give up. Sometimes, look, I cannot refer now. I don't do this for polemical reasons. I cannot refer to a religious conversion, but I remember a case of political conversion. I tried to make Republicans out of Democrats, right? And I remember I talked to one who was an ardent Democratic voter and a registered member of the Democratic Party, and I was very patient with him, and at a certain point he gave me an argument which was so stupid that I said, okay, cut it out, I've had it. But I had said enough. 3 years later, I met him again, and he said, Gregory, whiz kid, you turned me around, now I'm a member of the Republicans. And I said, good, it worked. It worked. And this is what you have to do in the religious. I quoted a political conversion for the simple reason that this has never happened to me with a religious conversion, but it might as well happen. So far, my religious conversions were step-by-step work. But sometimes you cut the contact, and what you said will continue working in the mind of the person. See, anybody who does not refuse the truth eventually will find it. John Wayne found it on his deathbed. He died a Catholic with all the sacraments. They say this about George Washington. I have indications that it is true, but there's no proof. But it's definitely true with John Wayne, so it works. Huh? You never give up hope. Hope means there might be a chance, and if it's only in the last moment. Questions?
Why is it that the veil of blindness is mostly in Rome, like this lady said?
Corruptio optimi pessima. The corruption of the best is the worst. And you know very well, being close to the sea, that when a fish starts to smell, it always starts at the head. Oh yeah, that's right. Well, I've been asked very often, how is it possible that out of 3,000 bishops, let's say it's 3,000 for the sake of argument, 2,994 are following the Novus Ordo and all the heresies of today? How is it possible? Well, I told you, we cannot judge intentions. So I only can, I can give you, let's say, an estimate on a percentage. Most of the clergy just don't want to lose their beautiful job. Huh? It's materialism. Sheer commodity and materialism. They know if they go back to the old Mass, they will be fired. And the same with the bishops. You can't imagine how many bishops gloom and bloom and glow the moment they're in front of a TV camera, which they won't get the moment they say the old Mass. And then, of course, with the buffet table facing the people, you can put up a show. At Mass, you have to concentrate on the sacrifice, and you can't put up a show. And some people don't like that. And then, of course, there is a vast majority of misled people. Take the average parish priest of, let's say, a 32 years. He was born when Vatican II was over. He has never had the Catholic faith, just like the present Pope. He has never had the Catholic faith. The typical average 32 years old parish priest was born when Vatican II was over. He has never seen the old liturgy. He has never experienced the old faith. He most probably never saw the Baltimore Catechism or the Catechism of St. Pius X. He will be stuffed with the new catechism, about which I don't have to talk here, because all I have to tell you is the new catechism quotes Vatican II over and over again, and the worst places of all. So that settles the new catechism. Apart from that, the new catechism is a half-Jewish Kabbalistic book written by the Archbishop of Vienna, Austria, Monsignor Schönborn. And it's very friendly towards the Jews. It's not very friendly towards the Catholics, as usual today. So the usual young priest today, he has never had it. And the old priest usually is too stubborn. Now he's celebrating the wrong thing for 30 years, and he will not admit it. Or he doesn't want to lose his retirement, his pension. And then, of course, there are some. I don't dare to give a percentage, but it's more than you think. There are some who want to destroy the church, and that's why they do what they do. In 1974, I said this yesterday, NATO estimated 3,000 communist agents to be among the church hierarchy. We know that Joseph Stalin, Uncle Joe in the 1930s, infiltrated Western seminaries with KGB agents. So I don't think these people are really misled. They want to destroy the church. And some of the people make money on destroying the church, like my dear friend Andrew Greeley and others. So this is the answer. And that's a majority. Well, we started with 12 bishops and one of them was a traitor. So now we got it the other way around. That is not true. Only a tiny minority of the members of the hierarchy are members of the Masonic lodges. Look, with most of them, why would the lodges be stupid enough to accept them into the lodge if they do anyway what they want? The usual priest today and the usual bishop today is nothing else but the faithful idiot Lenin mentions so often in his works. The useful idiot, not the faithful idiot. He's the useful idiot. And so the lodges don't need a membership. As a matter of fact, just before I was confronted with this so-called list of 120 Masons in the Vatican. That list is a fraud. The authentic list came out in 1976, I think it was, and contained 14 or 16 names, which I did some research on while I was in Rome, and I found that with 13 of those 16 I could prove they were Masons. Or it had been proved that they were Masons. And then a year after that, the lodge came out with a list of 120 persons who supposedly belonged to the Masonic lodges. Yeah, except that of those 120 persons, I know at least 7 who are definitely not Masons. One of them is the bishop who ordained me, and who is one of the most pious bishops I've ever met. He's Novus Ordo because he's a theological idiot, but it's not his fault. But he's an extremely good man. He's a holy person. He suffers from encephalitis now, and I want you to pray for him. His memory is gone, but he prays hours and hours every day. He gets up at 2 o'clock at night and wants to celebrate Mass because he doesn't know what time of the day it is. All he wants to do is to pray. It doesn't sound like a Mason to me. He was on the list, and it's just one example. So again, do not trust the Weekly World News or the National Enquirer. And do not trust all the Catholic newspapers, especially the Wanderer, which is, I think, below the level of the Weekly World News. Oh, the Weekly World News is fun. The Wanderer is boring me stiff.
To what extent are we responsible to evangelize or tell what we've learned to...
We are not Jehovah's Witnesses. We are not Jehovah's Witnesses, so don't put your foot in your mouth or in the door. That might turn out bad. When a Jehovah's Witness put his foot in my door, he faced the barrel of a .357 Magnum Ruger. He disappeared very fast. No, you do what you can without going on people's nerves. Because, see, this is very important. Don't go on people's nerves. Because then they just for the sake of escaping you will not listen to you. So, oh my God, I gotta go. Huh? Don't go on people's nerves. And be friendly. Sometimes it's the Catholics in this country who are so rude, and not the Episcopalians, who are nice and polite. So please, do not bother people. But make sure that you do not hide your opinions, quote unquote, your faith. Do not hide your faith, make it known. But when you see it's rejected, do not insist. It will only cause the contrary. Pressure always causes counter-pressure. Always. It's a law of physics.
You know, the Catholic paper exactly that belongs to you is a priest that you can write to and you'll answer. And someone asked him about his private blood brothers and sisters, and he said that, well, not through the Virgin Mary, but St. Joseph probably had a previous marriage and had children.
It's an interesting theory. It's an interesting theory, except it contradicts the church doctrine on St. Joseph being castissimus sponsus, the most chaste husband.
Something about Cardinal Stickler. I don't know.
All you want to know about him?
Friends from church.
Cardinal Stickler is the typical example of a very pious, very learned, very erudite, and misled person. Oh, if you want him to say the Old Mass, he will say the Old Mass. If you want him to say the New Mass, he will say the New Mass. The Mass he celebrates back home is a mixed rite. He has the old missal. I should know. I served his Mass. He served my Mass, and I served his Mass. We are old friends. Cardinal Stickler and I, we have a friendship dating back to 1975. But I was kind of confused when I saw him celebrating something which is neither to be found in the New nor in the Old Missal. And I asked him after Mass, I said, excuse me, but what rite do you celebrate? And he said, well, I'm celebrating the old rite the way the Council wanted it to be reformed. And I said, oh, and so you're the authority on it. He didn't say anything. He knew I was always impertinent with him, so.
In my parish church, the organist at times, during the people going to communion, he would play the theme from Exodus.
Nothing worse shall ever happen. Yeah, well, it's an Exodus. They all leave the church. Might as well play the Exodus. The only interesting door in the Novus Ordo Church is the one that says exit. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I should say, I did say this before, but I should remind you of the fact you're not allowed to attend Novus Ordo Masses. You're not allowed to attend Novus Ordo Masses unless for social purposes, like a wedding funeral. And in that case, you have to shut up. Don't say amen. Amen doesn't mean yes, it's all right. Amen means yes, yes, yes. You cannot say yes, yes, yes to something that's against divine law. Just wanted to repeat this. You will hear it on tape too. Question left?
Yes, what you said again about the Pius X missal they use in the liturgy of the Mass?
Repeat the question a little louder, please, so I can get it on tape.
You mentioned something about the missal.
Yeah.
Pius X used.
Oh, the Society of St. Pius X.
Yes.
Oh, that's a very good question, indeed. I used the missal of, let's say, 1949, but there was no special edition printed in 1949. What I'm trying to say is, I do not celebrate ever the reforms of Holy Week done by Pius XII, because I think they're illicit. You will hear my first speech on Pius XII, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. I do not celebrate the Mass of 1962, and I refuse it over my dead body, for the simple reason that I do not believe that the Pope has the right to delete from the Missal. When John the 23rd added St. Joseph to the Canon, it showed that he little understood the Canon, but I have nothing against it. Why not? St. Joseph is one of the most precious saints we have, and he's the patron of the Church, so might as well put him in the Canon, and I've never left out St. Joseph of the Masses I celebrate. However, I refuse to celebrate the Reformed Easter ceremony after Pius XII. The Reform took place in 1949 and became mandatory in 1955. And I think to a degree it destroyed the old Easter. I will only mention one thing. I think I'm repeating myself as to the first lecture, but Good Friday has been wrecked by Pius XII. And Good Friday ceremony is the oldest ceremony in the entire Latin Church. I think I said that on Thursday, so I won't repeat it here. And I do not accept it. The reason why the Society of St. Pius X decided for 1962 is, see, when you are in the situation of self-defense, according to moral theology, you're not allowed to go beyond the necessary. That means if somebody tries to grab your handbag, that doesn't give you the right to kill him. You will wrestle with him and try to take it away. You may kill him when he threatens your life.